2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Don't Do That, the podcast where we talk about what not to do at work and beyond.
As equity practitioners, we found ourselves often thinking that folks should stop doing things before they start doing things. Hence the title of our podcast, Don't Do That. I'm Anee. I'm an equity coach, organizational equity strategist, and educator with a deep curiosity for how to improve systems and a commitment to lift others as I continue to learn and grow.
I'm Karen, and I've worked in social justice for over a decade. I'm a consultant, coach, and thought partner. My purpose is to make community matter. I do that by helping leaders create better work environments. Anee and I met as consultants and quickly became friends. Collectively, we have over 25 years of experience navigating equity, inclusion, and justice in the workplace. Don't Do That is a platform to tell stories about making mistakes at work and how to fix them. The views on this podcast are our own. We do not speak on behalf of our organizations or the communities we mention.
Welcome, listeners. Today on Don't Do That, we're talking about quitting and how complicated all that comes with it can feel and be, whether we're in an economic boom or in a season of shrinking budgets. Transitions can always feel tough and deeply personal for many people. Some folks don't get to quit. Sometimes that decision is made for you. And others are just hanging on in survival mode, trying to, make it do what it do at their job. So today we're going to talk about everything that comes along with quitting, how to quit, how do you know when it's the right time to quit, why so many of us struggle to leave. We'll give some context around things like job hugging and, which is staying for comfort or stability. We'll talk about quiet quitting and really unpack what's behind our loyalty to our jobs, even when they may no longer serve us. So I'm excited to get started with our conversation today.
Let's do it.
So, of course, we're going to start with the context. So as we all know, our workplace is ever changing, and we really have to think about what is the context for employment and generally the workplace. So between economic uncertainty and burnout, shifting values, social media fueled expectations, quitting is not just about your career decision. For so many of us, our job is tied to our livelihood. For some people, it's tied to sort of like your personal values and your purpose. It can be your identity, your income, and really about survival in many ways. So I think that's really important for us to name at the top. Other pieces of context, we have shorter tenures. We have changing loyalty to our jobs. 30, 40, 50 years ago, many people stayed at their jobs for 30 years because it ended with pensions. It made sense to be loyal to an organization because there was a reward at the end. Today, most employers are not offering pensions. So with self-funded retirement plans, it really makes sense to make the most money sooner than later because your contributions is what matters. So on average, currently, wage and salary workers, their tenure for employment is around 3.9 years. And even 7 years ago, even 2 decades ago, that number was 7 years. So in 20 years, that number has shrunk almost to half.
Yeah.
And for younger folks, it is 2.8 years, which again makes a lot of sense. And I think that's important context, whether you're a people manager and thinking about retaining people on your team, or you're thinking about yourself as an employee. On average, most people are staying at their jobs 3 to 5 years nowadays. The other pieces that I mentioned earlier, job hugging, which is, folks who stay at their job because it's job security, their livelihood is tied to it, maybe healthcare or other benefits, and they might feel stuck in that role. Maybe they don't feel like they have a lot of flexibility. This can be exacerbated by economic crises. So if there are like hiring freezes or shrinking budgets, or economic stability, you'll find a lot of people sort of like job hugging. And then the other thing that we'll see is quiet quitting, which is really connected to burnout. So that is, I have given all I can give. I'm working 12 hours a day and I am just checked out at this point. Not only am I working that much, but I don't feel like my compensation or reward is commensurate with my effort. So for quiet quitting, those are folks who maybe haven't officially put in their 2 weeks notice, but they are really done with their job. And then the last piece of context before we just chat is social media's influence. I think oftentimes when we talk about social media, we forget to include some workplace social media, including LinkedIn. I read some articles in preparation for today around how LinkedIn, active users on LinkedIn can feel disconnected or can feel like not engaged at their current job. Of course, that is connected to like comparison and all of that stuff. I think it's amplified when you see a lot of people posting like their new job title or like, oh, wow, this person who maybe graduated with me is uh, perhaps in a role that is feeling like it is beyond my own role, or you're looking for a job and you see like, oh, so many people have gotten new jobs. So even if you're in a stable sort of role and you're growing, it can feel like you're not doing that well and sort of push you towards feeling like, oh, I need a transition if you are active on those social media sites. So we will have that conversation. Karen, I'm interested to hear your experience with this, especially as we're considering that context. How do we think about when it's time to quit and how you do it amidst all of these things? So let's get into it.
Let's do it. I think we have a lot to talk about here. That was great
Yes.
context.
So, off the top, let's talk about how do you know when it's time to quit? How do you know when it's more than just like a rough season, or this is just like a hill that I can get over, or when it's like, nah, I need to get out of here.
Yeah. So I was thinking about my own career journey, and I have quit or resigned most of the roles that I've had, meaning I've had the fortunate pleasure to decide when to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, there are a few factors that go into making a choice like that. One is my career or role taking more than it's giving to me? So, am I coming home at the end of the day saying today drained me? And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm saying that more often than not, to me, that's a signal that it's time for something new.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece is if I am interested in growth and advancement, assessing whether that's possible in the role or place that I'm in. And if it's not, then I think that's another signal that it's time to go in order to, achieve that growth and advancement.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece for me is particularly for those of us that have experienced like toxic work cultures or work cultures that are just not supportive. I learned like a marker for me and a signal for me is when work started to creep into my personal life. And one like story that I'll share, and I may have shared this before, but for one role that I was in, it was my like first leadership role, and I remember being at happy hour with my boyfriend, then now my fiance, and we were celebrating like an interview process that he was in. And in the course of our conversation, we, started to talk about my job. And girl, I started to cry at the table.
Oh. Oh no.
And it wasn't as if like we were talking about something super sensitive. It was just so much of that role was like taking so much out of me that it was spilling over into my personal life in ways that I couldn't even like show up in the way that I wanted to for him. And for me, that was like, okay, I got to get out of here like faster than I
Yeah.
thought I did. So those are some of my personal experiences with knowing when it's time to say
Yes.
goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, that is certainly a good, if your job is making you cry, it is certainly time to get up
Cry
out
at
of
happy
there.
hour, nonetheless, child.
Certainly, it is a good time to start looking. For me, I think, you know, especially given the context of tenure, average tenure for an organization, I think we should always be looking for a job, just considering how long it takes to find a job. And this also changes depending on where you're at in your career and the things you need from a job at that time. So I also want to say, like, I appreciated your point of, you know, you need to evaluate what the value is for you, because I think that's really important. Like, I was in a professional development session yesterday, and the presenter talked about, like, when you're in your early career, the value for your job could be like, this is experience and I'm learning. I'm literally learning, you know, whatever the subject matter is, and I'm building my skills. So I might stay so long as I have the opportunity to learn. And if you're maybe mid career, maybe you have a lot happening in your personal life, and like the value to you might be stability, or it could be work life balance, or it could be some particular benefit. And you might stay so long as you're getting that. And if you're maybe more advanced in your career, it might be, you know, you want to feel like you're respected by leadership. So it can look different, but agreed that there has to be some sort of exchange
Yeah.
there. Um, and I think you should always be looking, so that when a rough season comes about, you feel like you have options and you're not stuck.
Mhm. Now, when you say always be looking, do you mean actually actively applying or keeping an ear to the streets? Like, what does that
I
look like
think
for you?
both. And again, I think it also depends on where you're at in your career and what you're looking for in your career. And it's also industry specific as well. Like, I imagine if you work in healthcare, the opportunities look different, you know, and how you apply and look. So I don't know that you would need to be actively applying. I think if you're like a corporate person, yeah, sure, why not? Why not apply? It could also be dependent on where you're at in your career. If you're a more senior level, obviously you might want to chill on the actual applications, because that can trigger some you know, if you're putting your name in the ring for like a vice president role every 6 months, like your job will know, and you will look like you are unstable. But yeah, I think you should actively be pursuing different opportunities, whatever that looks like for your career, and where you're at, um, including actually applying, interviewing. I think it's also hard when you haven't interviewed in a long time
Yeah,
to
it
like
is.
get into the rhythm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I will say too, I think that at a certain point in your career, and I learned this in one of a professional development opportunity that I had, they talked about like the power of your network and how at a certain point in your career, it's no longer about, you know, looking at job boards and applying blindly to roles. It is really about tapping into your network and the people that you're connected to be able to one know about opportunities before they technically right like hit the street. And
Yeah.
for folks, I think when you get to a certain level, especially at like an executive or leadership level, they're not looking for someone off the street, right? You need people that can refer you and can vouch for your skill, your character, and all the things that are necessary to be able to be in leadership roles. So I think it's important to always be talking with folks, you know, showing up in the spaces where your peers and colleagues are, because it keeps you top of mind, you know, for when
Yeah.
those opportunities become available.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I also, this also came up in the session I was in, around how folks take, you know, quitting or transitions in their roles so deeply personal. I can remember a time when I was at an organization and I was looking for a promotion. The feedback that I got was like, unfortunately, we're not able to give you the promotion. And for me, that was like enough information for me to say, I'm not going to remain at this organization. And I didn't take it personally. It was just like, okay, that was the information I needed to make a different decision. The things that
Mhm.
I want for myself are not available here. And I can stay and keep advocating, or I can leave and get it somewhere else. And I did
Yeah.
leave and get it somewhere else. So
Yeah.
I think oftentimes it can feel like a personal rejection. And I think most times it really isn't. I think most times it's, whatever your organization or your manager's perception of like a good business decision, but it's not necessarily about you personally.
Yes, until it can be. If like I'm thinking of scenarios where other people are getting promotions or roles that like you would be promoted into next. It's kind of like on Love and Basketball when she was like, "Never let a freshman take your spot." It's like
Yeah.
people take your
Again, but I think that's a business decision, right? There's a reason why the company doesn't value you. Now, best case scenario, it is on merit alone. Um, or worst case scenario, it is some nefarious reason like discrimination or otherwise but at the end of the day, you you don't want to be there, right? So I think that's the information that you need. If this is a
yeah,
company that is personally discriminating against you, or you're working for someone who personally does not like you, like what would be the benefit to see that through?
yeah, I agree. It is meaning a time to go.
It is time to go. That is all that you needed to know. Like, I'm out of here.
Clock.
So on your way out, like what is like best practices?
So I think this has changed for me over time. And now I think it's totally dependent on scenario. Because early in my career, I feel like the standard like 2 week notice is a courtesy to give to your employer. However, as I have ascended in my career and have experienced people being let go, right? Like I've experienced a supervisor being let go. I have been a part of conversations as it relates to having to let people go and downsize staff. And when those things happen, we don't get a 2 week notice as employees more often than not. And so I think for me, it is very dependent on the situation that you're in. And I think you have to make the best choice according to like what's important for you and your own sense of integrity. Um, so I don't know that I would be like a cut and dry, like you always have to, give a 2 week notice or you're just seen as like not being a good professional. I think you got to do what is right for you.
That's a controversial take.
Tell me why.
Interesting. Um, I think most people would say, like, if you talk to like HR folks or career counselors, they would say, at minimum, you want to give plenty of notice to your employers. You don't want to burn bridges, and you want to make sure that on your way out, folks feel like they can rely on you. I do agree with there's no reason to be overly loyal. Like I
Mhm.
1,000% agree with that. Like I'm not suggesting anyone be doing personal favors for their employers, like putting themselves out to accommodate their employers. I've seen people on their way out, they're like, oh, I'm going to create a whole transition binder to like train the next person, or like, unless you were explicitly asked, I don't think all that is necessary. But I do think that on your way out, you need to think strategically about how to continue to create the most amount of options for yourself. So if for you, you're saying, I never desire to associate with these people. Like, I might not even put them on my resume, don't need them, won't be reaching back out, don't need a job verification, don't care if they talk about me, then like no need to consider anything with that employer. But I
Mhm.
think if you are trying to create the most amount of options for yourself strategically, you want to think about what maybe are some priorities for your employer as you're transitioning, and think about like what are the mutual wins there. And I think an easy mutual win is like transition time, because it doesn't really take too much from you necessarily, and it gives your employer time to like backfill that role or seat. Do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with that, but I think that is in a best case scenario if circumstances allow for that. I think that if you are in environments where you have been treated poorly or you have experienced things that are harmful, then I wouldn't say that you are required to give a 2-week notice or to give your employer the best possible option. I think that you should be strategic in terms of what would make me feel good and what aligns with my personal work ethic and my sense of integrity. And if that is giving a 2-week notice, then great. If it's not that, then it's not that. I think that you also have to maybe take on the consequences that could come from that. But I wouldn't say suffer through something for the sake of giving your employer the most leeway that they need. Because to me, I feel like folks will figure it out, right? Like if you, for some reason, never showed up to work again, people would have to
Sure.
figure it out.
Yeah, of course, yes. They will figure it out. And I also think like if you're working in a hostile environment or have felt like tremendously unsafe, I would say more people should be exploring like term packages and
What is that?
like contacting an employment lawyer. If you feel like you are in a situation where I need to quit today, like 0 days notice, like I'm concerned for my mental health, safety, all those things, I would say you are working in a hostile work environment and you should be thinking about other ways to be compensated on your way out, and not just like politely quitting if it is at that level. I also would say, this is also another best practice for me, is like I think one mistake a lot of people make is like they wait till that point. They wait till it has gotten so bad. I have suffered through for a year at this point, and now it's like I have to quit. That could also be circumstantial in that like maybe you have been looking for a job for a year and that's why you've been suffering through. But I would say at the first instance, especially if you're like constantly looking, like at the first instance of like something crazy has happened, start to explore your options. Like you never want to quit like when you've gotten there. Like you
Yeah.
want to quit well before you have gotten there, well before you have, been aggrieved like at that level that you're like, I'm quitting. My last day is Friday. I'm going to take a month off. I need to get my mind together. So, yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's a balance of, to your point, how much loyalty to show, because an employment relationship is a transactional relationship. And so in terms of I am providing my talent and skill and you are providing me compensation for that. And I know and have experienced when employers need to downsize staff,
Yes.
you can get on a call with HR at 5 p.m. and they can tell you today is your last day. So,
Yeah. No, completely agree. Completely agree. I think that's just the nature of, you know, capitalism and power and work. Um, okay, so before we get into do that or don't do that, I want to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they quit, or like when they are staying too long. If you have like any stories or examples, let me know.
That's a good question. I don't have any stories necessarily of like people staying too long. I will say that for me, when one of my work experiences, when I knew like, okay, it's time for me to start thinking about what's next, I went through a process of reflection for myself where I asked myself, like, am I running to something or am I running away from something in terms of this role and my work experience? And if if the answer was I was running away from something, then I wanted to like part two to that is like, well, what do I want to be running toward? Right. In terms of like what I'm creating for myself next. And some questions that like I asked myself were what are the things that I'm good at and like what are my strengths? And then from there, what are the things that I actually like want to be doing when I think about what comes next? What are the types of places that I could do that in? And then who do I know that are connected to these types of places that I could do that in? And that was really helpful for me to answer those types of questions because it led me to more clarity around like these are the types of roles that you know feel like it would give me to be doing more of what I want to do, and it helps me remember my network of like I can
Yeah.
start having conversations with people and be very pointed about like I'm looking for my next opportunity, here's what I'm looking for, and I know you're connected to these types of organizations or businesses and would love for you to keep an ear out for any upcoming opportunities. So I would really, if you're in the fortunate place to be able to, decide when to quit, then I think that doing some reflection and introspection can go a long way in your search for what's next.
Love that. I'm going to get a little brass tacks. I think two of the biggest mistakes that people make is like one is not thinking about the work that they've done at that organization and how they want to retain that work moving forward. So I
Mhm.
think well before you put in your 2 weeks or 1 week or a couple days notice, you should start thinking about, okay, what has my impact been at this organization and how do I want to transition that out? Because once you're in those last 2 weeks, it is sort of this, or last few days, a whirlwind of like clearing things out and transitioning over. And you don't necessarily have the time to sort of say, like, okay, here are the 3 projects that I worked on, and how do I want to like retain this information and, transition that to whatever my next role is. The other mistake that people make when they quit is, I think people assume that their next job is going to be head and shoulders way better,
Mhm.
and I don't think that's true. I think you're going to grow to dislike that next job the same. I think most workplaces, I mean, it's a group project. For many of us working in the US of A, there are all the things that come with, that context as well. So I would sort of temper expectations. Like it'll be great because it's a new opportunity for you, but I think people sort of in that making it like deeply personal sort of say like, "Ugh, I'm leaving these losers behind and I'm like on to better pastures." And it's like, not really. Like you might very well see those people again soon, sooner than you think. And like the new job is a great new thing for you, but it will become old. And yeah, I think sort of like tempering expectations of like, I'm getting out to go on to like joy.
You're like everyone will have some shit eventually.
Every organization, there's going to be something that you dislike about everywhere that you're at. Like it's just not possible that you would love 100% of the things. So I think, sort of being again strategic about what is the new thing offering you.
I feel that.
Okay. So favorite part of our show, do that or don't do that. Would you like to go first or should I go first?
Yeah, I can go first.
Okay.
So do that or don't do that. Announce that you quit on social media.
I would announce the new job. I don't think you need to announce that you quit. I think it's implied. So
But what if
no
you
need.
haven't had a new job yet? Should you be like,
Oh,
I left?
yeah, I'm not talking about the old thing. I mean, I'm not doing that just as like a personal practice. Like if there's something that I dislike or moving on from, I'm just not speaking energy into that thing. So if I'm on to the next, we just only talking about what the next thing is. I'm consulting. I'm open to work. I'm I'm a new entrepreneur, whatever I am. So
We're only going forward,
we're
not
only
back.
going forward. No
Mhm.
need to go back. On that line, do that or don't do that. Are you writing Glassdoor reviews?
No, don't do that. For me, um, I honestly don't feel like Glassdoor reviews are that helpful for my like what I use to assess an experience because I feel like it is mostly an extreme. Like either you had a very bad experience with an employer or you had a very good
Right.
experience with an employer. And I think most folks will fall somewhere in between. And so I I don't feel the need to provide a review of my employer. And I honestly I and this is mostly could be due to my own ignorance, but I'm not sure like to what extent Glassdoor impacts or is like a trigger to change behavior for employers. So there's also that.
Yeah, agree. I'm certainly not writing anything there. But I do read them and I don't think that they're ever wrong. I don't think things that people are saying are incorrect, but I don't know that they are prohibitive. I don't know that anyone's going to read a Glassdoor review and be like, based on that, it's a no for me. Like
Yeah.
all things were a go, but Karen wrote this place sucks, so I can't take the job. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I do think it's like good context to have. But no, I'm not. I'm not. Shout out to the people who do write them though.
Yeah. Okay. Do that or don't do that. Use the exit interview as an opportunity to expose or read your employer for filth.
Um, I would say likely don't do that, but I do think there can be an exception if I don't think read them for filth. If I do think that something I say someone will take action on, I would say it. So if there's a, you know, hey, I think XYZ team needs a little extra help. It's like completely understaffed. And I know budget season is coming up. I might, share 2 notes or something like that. Like the leadership isn't able to do well, you know, like instead of saying like everyone's burned out on the team, be like, oh, they need more resources, that type of thing. But I don't think I would read anybody for filth. And I say that as someone who does people analytics full time. 9 times out of 10, the things that people are sharing in exits also come up on Glassdoor, also come up in cultural assessments, also come up anecdotally, also come up in like employee investigations. So there is an understanding of those challenges. I think it's helpful to like have additional data and evidence to support it, but usually if there is like a rub in affecting change, it's not necessarily always additional data that will help create that change.
That's fair. I would agree. I don't think I would use an exit interview as an opportunity to read people specifically. But I would, if that work environment was such that I did not feel open or the ability to like speak openly and be candid, I would use the exit interview for that purpose for sure.
Yeah. I will also say I am someone who will be very transparent, and people are always going to know how I feel about things. I think I have built an ability or a skill to be diplomatic enough to be pretty transparent. So I think on the way out, no one would be surprised about like how I felt. Like if I feel like there are some extreme challenges, my supervisor will know. I will lift that up to executive leadership. I will share with my colleagues. I might say it in like a joke or, figure out a way, but it is very challenging for me to not to think something and not express it because I generally feel that information is helpful to people.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you're
I
gonna know.
am the same. I will call a thing a thing.
Um, okay, last one for me is: are you taking job interviews during work hours, like while you're at work?
Oh my gosh. Why is it so hard for me? I would try not to if I can, um, just to keep the lines clear. If I do need to take a job interview during a work hour, then I would just try to take the time off. Like use
Yeah,
whatever PTO or sick time that I have to like take, the hour or 90 minutes for an interview.
yeah, totally agree with that. Especially as someone who has interviewed people like and they were like sitting in their car or it's like you should have taken a day off. Like, it's like I gave you a couple weeks for this now, and then it's like I'm looking at you like, is this what you do? Like, just I mean, maybe people are hourly. I can offer some grace, but
It can be a lunch break, you know?
yeah, I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, please take the time off, prepare, make me feel like you want to be here and not like you're just getting away from this other job. So, yeah,
I mean, listen, times are hard, Ani. We got to do what
times
we
are
got to
definitely
do for
hard.
each other.
And I'm also not mad at people who make decisions that are like purely financial around jobs, because that makes a
Mm,
lot of sense too.
absolutely. I mean, I think most of us, because of the way that our systems are set up, need work to finance our life. And so,
Yes,
you know, the dollars have to make sense.
the dollars have to make sense. What a great close. Any final thoughts and um, key takeaways?
Yeah, I think my final thought is like the decision to quit is a really personal one. And I will say that it is an opportunity to invite other folks and like seek counsel from like mentors or other people that you trust, just as more information and data into like your decision making process. So I would encourage folks to share, what they're experiencing, what they're thinking about as relates to quitting and do what works best for you. But always also keep your personal sense of integrity intact because I think that will carry you a long way.
Yes. And building on that, I would say for me, quitting happens well before your final 2 weeks. You should always be thinking about, as soon as you start a job, what transitioning will look like. Um, and really get honest with yourself around like what is the value of that job for you, whether it is an opportunity to learn, it's a particular title, it is your salary, a combination of those things, work life balance, whatever it is. And then be willing to sort of pivot once you're no longer receiving, that value.
I love that.
Um, okay.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing us this important topic. I know that it has touched most professionals at one time or another. So we appreciate you all listening. And if you enjoyed our conversation, please, please, please leave us a review. We say that at the end of every episode, and we mean it at the end of every episode. So pause this and leave us a review, y'all. It helps us to boost our engagement. Share this podcast with any peers or colleagues that you think would be interested. And if you'd like to reach Ani and I directly, email us at the don't do that pod@gmail.com. And remember, until next time,
Don't
don't
do
do
that.
that.